Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, to Unleash the Rage, a new series that I've developed and made because, well, that cyborg shit wasn't really going to go down, so instead I've decided to be myself, lose my mind, and bitch at people who I think are stupid. Now, let me just remind everybody who's going to be watching this series that all of these statements that I'm going to say in the following videos, or if it doesn't go so well, this following video is my own belief. It's not the belief that I feel everyone should have, nor it's the belief that I feel everyone should think about or really adopt. This is mainly me raging at people who I feel are wrong. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin with victim number 1, Youngblood Fantasy 91, who we probably might go back to in the near future if he decides to respond to this. So, Youngblood Fantasy recently did a video where he lambasted a person for having a different viewpoint than him. Shocker. Wow. Didn't see that one coming. But is this video his best work? Not by a long shot. In fact, actually, this is probably one of the worst videos he's ever produced. And it's mainly due to the fact that he has no idea what he's talking about. Disagree with me? Well, let's get to it.
Hey guys, Youngblood Fantasy 91 here with another commentary for you wonderful people. Today's music consists of plenty of horrid acts.
Oh man, they're not the same as my good old day music like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, which by the way, I wasn't born in that generation, so I'm just stealing from them, which is how Youngblood comes off most of the time when he's expressing his musical beliefs. Get used to it, because he does this a lot. You know, his jerking off the oldies while condemning the newbies sort of mentality, let's just say.
That's not to say many other decent bands and projects are lingering to make music listenable, such as Sufjan Stevens, or Black Country Communion, or the Black Keys, or Arctic Monkeys, or Radiohead, or Fiona Apple, or even Kate Bush.
Basically, every single band that appeals to guys who wear ironic glasses and think that Muse sucks because everyone likes them now. Hipsters. Now, granted, I like the Black Keys, Radiohead, and, well, nothing else from that list. But most of those bands, minus the Black Keys and Black Country Communion, if I'm not mistaken, are really a bunch of hipster acts. Not very eclectic or beautiful like Muse, or let's say, I don't know, Adele, call me crazy. Probably some other acts out there. I can't think of any, but hell, you know, it's better than this hipster shit.
But on the opposite side of the coin, you have the media-laden teeny boppin' pop stars that will not exit the stupid record charts despite it having been an upteen amount of times after you heard the insipid poppy nonsense of Carly Rae Jepsen, or the unnecessarily edgy lyrics of Maroon 5, or even the incessant references to the inexorable club made by oh-so-not-vacuous Flo Rida, who, by the way, is #1 in America. Thanks, guys.
Oh man, yeah, totally. They're the pinnacle of what pop music is, you know, not Adele or Fun with a period because hipsters are funny, or any other numerous acts that have been coming out in the last few months that aren't necessarily this cutesy-wootsy poppy crap. No. It's only Flo Rida, Lil Wayne, and Taylor Swift, and they're the only people that are conquering the charts now.
And because there are so many artists that can easily be critiqued for their lack of musicianship or lack of talent, it's not a surprise that people are bashing on One Direction, who are, for the record, a British-Irish boy band, since people call all of them British erroneously, including people like A Dose of Buckley, who did a musical autopsy video on One Direction. Now, unlike the previous users I tackled, I pretty much was in assent as to what Adam Buckley had to say regarding One Direction. However, all that changed in one specific part of the video after he makes the most inappropriate comparison ever, and indirectly stating that One Direction could be the impetus for another British invasion.
And this is where we talk about why I actually hate this specific video. Youngblood Fantasy has no fucking idea what he's talking about. For the most part, he's continuously going back to the British invasion's the best thing ever, instead of the real argument, which is, why is everyone hating One Direction and these poppy boy bands while glorifying early Beatles, which was basically the same thing? That is what the whole conversation's about, and yet Youngblood wants to make it a semantics argument or a fucking thesis paper on how the Kinks and them and fucking the Animals are the most important thing to music since sliced fucking bread.
I'll listen in and I'll see what I have to say about this.
And if you don't know already, well, all he knows is what he can find on Wikipedia.
So, One Direction. A bunch of British pretty boys taking the US by storm by singing stupid songs about being in love with girls. Wait, hold on here. Where have I heard that before? If only I could think of another example.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something. I think you'll understand. And I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand.
Oh yeah, you're comparing a hack boy band that obviously did not spark any sort of revolution except faux revitalization of the boy band movement to the band that actually laid the foundation for the British invasion, an influential music movement based on post-Second World War sentiment and offshoot of the American rock and roll movement from the 50s.
What does this have to do with what Adam Buckley's saying? Adam Buckley, all he's trying to say is all the unwarranted hate for Jonas Brothers and One Direction should be directed at the originators, the classy, bullshit, nice-haired Beatles. And yes, I'm gonna say it, early Beatles fucking sucked. Until they dipped acid and made shit like Lucy and the Sky with Diamonds and Helter Skelter, they didn't mean shit. In my opinion, at least, they didn't mean shit. If you want to disagree with me, that's fine. That's okay. You have your opinion. That's cool. I'm not going to lambast you. Unfortunately, I just have to say they're not as good. When they started singing Twist and Shout, that's when I wanted to stab my fucking eardrum out. Yeah, sure, American acts weren't really doing very unique and different things either, while just doing the Let's Go Do the Hop 500 times, as compared to the Beatles, who were making lovey-dovey love songs. But hell, we had Richie Valens and fucking Buddy Holly. Two guys who would fucking lay the foundations for American rock and roll, which would later be taken up by the fucking Beach Boys. And of course, let's not forget the big overclouding elephant here, which is Elvis Presley. We shouldn't forget him and his fat, ugly fucking ass. But back to my point before I start riddling off random rock and roll facts. Why are you making this argument completely different than what it originally was? The original argument was that all these people that are bashing One Direction are kind of in the wrong because they weren't doing the fucking same to the Beatles, showing that they're slightly hypocritical. You're making it a semantics argument about how the Beatles were more important than One Direction, which is not what the fucking conversation's about.
I like how you make this comparison solely based on lyrics of particular songs.
Because that's the fucking argument!
Especially when you blatantly ignore how the Beatles, even early on, innovated the music scene with usage of minor chords in certain songs.
I got arms that long to hold you and keep you by my side.
And changing the point of view of the speaker in love songs.
You think you've lost your love? Well, I saw her yesterday. It's you she's thinking of.
And even if you want to dismiss the lyrics, you cannot ignore how melodic and unique the Beatles sound is. Whereas One Direction sounds like a mediocre carbon copy of 98 Degrees.
Yeah, we're not disacknowledging that here, folks, and we're not trying to do that, but here's where the problem happens. You know, he didn't mention all those things for one major reason. Can you guess why, Youngblood, if you're going to respond to this? No, you can't? Well, I'll just try to sum it up, because that's not his fucking argument, you fucking idiot! His argument is about how One Direction shouldn't get all this fucking hate because... well, the Beatles were doing it. Because Hanson and Jonas Brothers were fucking created because of your She Loves You and Help As much as I love Paperback Writer, I still think they kind of suck then. Just saying. And being honest here, let's not float the fucking boat. They influenced the Jonas Brothers. Let's not dodge the fucking argument here. The Jonas Brothers wouldn't exist hadn't fucking John, Paul, George, and Ringo dipped acid earlier.
Oh, shit. How pissed are you right now? How fucking ready are you to stop this video, go to my channel, click on subscribe, and comment about how much you hate me right now? Comparing One Direction to the Beatles? Blasphemy! But it's really not. I'm gonna bet 99% of the people who listen to this were not alive when the Beatles first performed in the USA in 1964.
And I'm sure you weren't either, man, so assuming that you can make this sort of comparison is just as flawed.
Hold your fucking horses here, Captain Nostalgia. Let's just go back a little bit here. Let me retort. Youngblood, you never lived in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. So how fucking dare you, how dare you steal the music of that time, claim it as your fucking opus and your greatest fucking hits collection, and then lambast anyone who even tries to criticize that music? How fucking dare you rape the fucking great music of the Beatles? How fucking dare you? Seriously, you're lambasting a guy for stating something that's kind of logical, that most of these people who are bitching about One Direction never lived in the 60s, so they can't necessarily bash One Direction because One Direction's influence, early Beatles, lived back in the time where most of these critics never fucking lived. You're using that against Adam Buckley, and I'm using that to say, how fucking dare you call out a guy who just wants to state a philosophy because you're fucking butthurt about a philosophy? How fucking dare you?
Their first big singles, I Wanna Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, and Love Me Do, are poppy songs with incredibly simple lyrics designed to dampen the panties of girls everywhere.
I know the lyrics are somewhat simple, and I get that, but...
Yeah, they're simple, and the whole point is that they were simple and made to make girls moist. Which is what One Direction does, and yet One Direction is lambasted while the Beatles are praised. And I know, more or less, in my personal opinion, most of the praise is coming from when, again, they were dipping acid and smoking weed out their ass to the point where they were fucking crazy as shit, making Number 9 or Revolution 9, the White Album, Revolver, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, understandable. Yeah, good show. But it's a valid point. Just saying.
But again, music also plays a dominant role in the designing of a great song, and the Beatles were experts in creating timeless melodies.
That's not the point.
And besides, do you think the Beatles were the only members of the British invasion that actually crafted somewhat simplistic lyrics? Take a look at bands such as Them.
And her name is G. L. Whoa. R. I. G. L. Y. Oh, yeah. G. L. Y. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna shout it all night. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna shout it everything. Oh, yeah.
The Kinks.
The only time I feel alright is by your side. Girl, I want to be with you all of the time, all day and all of the night. All day and all of the night. All day and all of the night.
And the Dave Clark Five.
I'm pieces, bits and pieces. Did you let me and just say goodbye? I'm pieces, bits and pieces. All I do is sit and cry. I'm pieces, bits and pieces.
Based on your criteria, One Direction is easily comparable to the previous three bands, despite the fact all of these bands wrote these songs on their own, whereas One Direction on their first album had only 2 songs that they somewhat wrote with the assistance of 2 other people.
First point here, and go into Wikipedia to show that you know what you're talking about. Good show, Youngblood. Good show. 2, if you've listened to most of those songs, a lot of those sound more like Who-inspired songs, not Beatles-inspired songs, especially Gloria and All Day and All the Night by the Kinks, especially those two. In fact, a lot of the British Invasion bands sounded a lot more like The Who and less like the Beatles. So, call me crazy, might be inspired a little bit more by the four guys who had the horse tranquilizer taking drummer and the crazy guitarist who breaks his guitar every fucking show than the Fab Four with their fucking haircut and their cutesy wootsy faces. Just saying. And third, and most importantly out of this whole thing, what did that have to do with Adam Buckley's point? Really, what the fuck does that have to do? We're talking about the Beatles being compared to One Direction, or One Direction being compared to the Beatles. We're not talking about One Direction being comparable to the fucking whole British fucking invasion. So how fucking just why? Just why? Just fucking why?
And this leads me to another point. The Beatles usually credited Lennon-McCartney for their hit songs, and even Harrison was alone in writing his own songs. One Direction went through close to 15 other songwriters, not including themselves, to produce the same basic lyrics. Think about it.
Yeah, I've thought about it, and it's a stupid point. Want to know why it's a stupid point? Because it's not a part of our fucking discussion. It's not a part of the discussion that Adam Buckley's bringing up. It's not a part of the discussion that anyone would be bringing up when it's talking about this situation. You're the only one that's bringing it up because, again, let's just be honest here. Let's not tiptoe around the situation. You're butthurt over the fact that Adam Buckley had a philosophy that's different than yours. Just being honest, you're butthurt because of that. Call me fucking crazy, but that's how I see it.
If you had have been the same age you are now, and if you currently don't like One Direction, Justin Bieber, or any other male pop act, you would have hated the Beatles at the time.
But the Beatles became famous around the cusp of a huge cultural revolution that was transpiring between the early to late 60s, so they embodied not only a musical message, but a cultural message that plenty can relate to. One Direction is hated on because they make unoriginal content that is a throwback to the campy boy band heyday of Hanson or the Backstreet Boys.
Both of those groups probably were influenced by early Beatles. Also, more importantly, back to the whole counterculture group deal over there. Fab Four, only fan base at that point in time were little boys and girls. Mainly that. Then they met Bob Dylan. He gave them marijuana. They got onto LSD. And that's when they became a fucking important part to rock and roll. When they had that whole main staple of, being a part of the whole rock scene, making Revolver, making the White Album, then that's when their influence spread, and you got the Grateful Dead, you got Jefferson Airplane, you got the fucking Doors and Jimi fucking Hendrix, for Christ's sake. That's when that happened. Not when they were clean cut and all happy-go-lucky, oh, it's so cute. Not when that happened.
That's not original, that's recapitalizing on something stupid. Give the Beatles some credit, they only started a massive musical movement that swept the world.
Because they took drugs. Is this a hard concept to get? They became popular and sustained life because they got creative juices in their fucking brain because of LSD and all that stuff, and they decided to write music that wasn't just a bunch of panty-wetting songs. Songs that actually meant something. That's why they became popular, not because they were still the Bobbitt twins and they were all, oh my god, we're so cute.
Of course, the Beatles played their own instruments and were far more talented, and those early songs were just the ticket to write much better and more interesting songs like Eleanor Rigby, Lady Madonna, Hey Jude, Come Together, and dabble in more experimental stuff like Strawberry Fields and I Am the Walrus.
Since you cited songs from Revolver and Sgt. Pepper and Abbey Road, then you understand why the Beatles retained their popularity. The Beatles realized that they could be more introspective and experimental. That's why albums such as Rubber Soul were landmark. They knew that they could create newer sounds with more interesting lyrics. Are One Direction going to do that? Well, looking at the list of producers and list of songwriters they hired for their albums, I don't think so. I don't see any independence from being overproduced or manufacturing of sound. This is why they are worlds off from the Beatles, even if you consider the Beatles pre-Rubber Soul era, because even they had one producer with one or two songwriters. That's it.
You're still not getting the fucking point here. The point isn't, oh, well, these guys had 700 producers, the Beatles had one producer, that means the Beatles superior. No, that's not the fucking conversation. The conversation is, hey, you know, everyone's making fun of One Direction and Hanson and the Backstreet Boys. Weren't they all influenced by the Beatles? That's weird, isn't it? That's what he's trying to say. The idea that the early Beatles influenced the Jonas Brothers, influenced One Direction, influenced the Hanson guys, influenced Backstreet Boys, influenced all of those people. Yeah, sure, with Justin Bieber, you have the Michael Jackson clone or whatnot. But with most of those other guys, they were influenced by early Beatles. You cannot fucking deny that. You really can't. At all, whatsoever. At any point in fucking time.
But when they hit the shores of North America in 1964, they were no better than the boy bands of today, and anyone who disputes that is just simply in denial.
Do you not fail to realize that when the Beatles touched the ground of New York City in February of 1964, they opened the sluice gates for other great artists to come around and make such great music such as Dusty Springfield, Petula Clark, Manfred Mann, The Animals, The Yardbirds, and Jerry and the Pacemakers? Did One Direction do that? Well, they kind of made Wanted relevant. Do you not see the asymmetry? Do you not see the cultural impact of this? Or are you really going to say that the Beatles should be forced on the same creative plateau as One Direction, despite their venerated history and ability to continually write cutting-edge songs? Man, you're myopic.
Do you not realize that this has nothing to fucking do with the conversation? Actually, you know what? I understand you don't realize this, because that's this whole video. You not understanding what this conversation's about. That's this whole fucking video. You not comprehending, not understanding what Adam Buckley's saying, and then using this time to have that giant fucking Beatles dildo shoved up your asshole while you're looking over Wikipedia. That's all this fucking video is. That's all it is. That's all it fucking is. You being butthurt and being a bitch about how, oh man, one guy has a different philosophy than you. I must strike him down with the thunderbolt of death. Okay, we'll get to the big word bullshit later, but right now, Youngblood. Let me try to explain something to you as simply as possible. Adam Buckley is not trying to compare One Direction creatively to the Beatles. He is just saying that the Beatles, early Beatles, might have influenced One Direction. That's probably what he's saying. If you don't understand it or don't like it, shut the fuck up. Now, I'm not saying you can't have an opinion. No. You can have an opinion. You can share your opinion. That's perfectly fine, too. But when you turn your opinion to fact, which is what you're trying to do here, because I'm guessing all that Wikipedia bullshit is sort of rotting your brain, then you can go fuck yourself.
Of course, there's about a 99% chance that One Direction isn't going to do anything different, that all they'll ever be is a pop group singing songs for little girls, until of course their fan base gets bored of them and moves on to the next thing, and they'll just be forgotten in a few years. But whenever you hate a boy band simply because they sing stupid poppy songs for little girls, just remember, one of the most beloved and influential rock and roll bands of all time did it too.
And so did many other British invasion bands who wanted to capitalize on the Beatles' success and formula. And even then they garnered popularity with their musicianship. Why do you think films like Stripes paid tribute to Manfred Mann? Maybe because, I don't know, they actually sound good?
Being a music and movie connoisseur, I can honestly say that they probably used that because it fit the mood of the film, not because they wanted to pay homage to the great band of Manfred Mann. No, they wanted to say, you know what, that song sounds kind of decent. That could fit well in this scene. That's probably it. You're just looking at it like a butthurt Beatles fan, not like a rational human being.
And that's the way it is. I don't hate Adam Buckley, and I liked some of his other musical autopsy reviews. I just think that the way he compared the Beatles to One Direction demonstrated how asymmetrical the comparison was.
It's not at all, actually. You just made it asymmetrical. Because again, let's go back to this. You're a Beatles buttfucker who used Wikipedia to lambaste a person for no fucking reason whatsoever.
The Beatles managed to score 20 hits in the United States, not including 6 or 7 hits that they made in the UK. If One Direction can do that, maybe I'll reconsider.
What would that have to change? That wouldn't change shit. That wouldn't fucking change.
But if you're going to base this all on lyrics, the Beatles were not the only band to do such a thing. And the British invasion should not be undermined, as it was a salient movement in musical history, and it spawned the generation of many influential acts and bands that still retain a presence on the radio and in musical discussion today. You can say all you want about the lyrics, but at least the Beatles and many other acts did manage to write music well. And besides, if you want to consider covers, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Dusty Springfield, and the Animals all did fantastic covers of songs and made it possible through their own musical talent or musicianship.
He's gone mad with Asperger's!
One Direction has yet to show any musicianship from all members, or any songwriting from just the five alone, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. Anyway, that's all I have to say about this. This is Youngblood Fantasy 91, and ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you all in the brighter later.
And that's the end of the video. Yay, woo. My vocal cords are annihilated and destroyed. Oh my god. Actually, no, I just lied. I can actually speak quite well. Okay, enough of that shit. Back to the normal I can't speak. Until then, guys, take care. See you later. And this discussion has just been put to rest. Thank you.